As you delve into the world of virtual computing, you're inevitably going to end up out on the internet somewhere trying to read and understand a little bit more about this. And you're going to come across a term called a hypervisor. And as a matter of fact, Microsoft even uses this term in their marketing names for their products. And so in this video, let's talk about hypervisor and the types just a minute. First of all, what exactly is a hypervisor? Well, a hypervisor is a virtual machine manager. Now, you will hear this referred to out there in documentation from time to time as a VMM. And what it does is it just sits out there and manages the execution of the guest operating systems, which is also referred to as a VM, or a virtual machine. So that's what it is. That's what it does. But as it turns out, there are two types of hypervisors out there in the virtual landscape. And so notice this. This is probably the first and the last time you'll ever see this in information technology. There are two types of hypervisors, and they are called Type 1 and Type 2. Who would have thought, right? So anyway, let's talk about these two types and what they mean when you read a product or you hear that it is a Type 1 hypervisor or a Type 2. A Type 1 hypervisor is something we're not really used to. This is also referred to as a bare metal hypervisor or bare metal virtualization solution, that sort of thing, or a native solution, but usually you'll hear the term bare metal. Now what this means is the hypervisor itself functions as the operating system. It runs directly on the host machine's hardware, hence the term bare metal. There's not necessarily an operating system there other than the fact that instead of loading VM Workstation onto the machine and then putting a virtual machine in, we simply load the hypervisor software onto the machine that doesn't have an operating system on it. Now Microsoft confuses the marketplace with this because they've got the Hyper-V solution, and in some instances you install that as a service on Windows Server 2008, but then they have a true hypervisor product out there that is a bare metal virtual solution. So then this thing just sits there on the bare metal. It controls the hardware and it manages the guest operating systems and how they interact with the hardware. And of course, by hardware, we mean the CPU, the processor, the memory, right, the disk subsystem where we're saving everything, all the peripherals, keyboards, mice, all that kind of stuff. And so the hypervisor takes care of all that. And again, the Type 1 is bare metal or native. Now this was first developed by IBM, and as a matter of fact, the original virtual environments was developed this way, and it was called CP/CMS for those of you who are interested. Now some of the modern variations of a Type 1 hypervisor based virtualization product would be something like Citrix and their XenServer products, VMware's ESXi, and then Microsoft's Hyper-V product. And to give you a little graphic or an image of how this works, just think of the hardware being the actual server box, if you will. And so on that box, we would install Hypervisor. That's the only operating system it has. And then into the hypervisor, we would install our virtual machines as a guest operating system, hence GOS right here. So I'm talking about, here's my computer, then I load hypervisor onto the computer, and then I can build my guest operating systems, and install them, and the hypervisor takes care of those, shows them to me, and lets me work with them and all that. Okay, so that is a Type 1 hypervisor. Now a Type 2 hypervisor is what most of the general public that knows about virtual computing is familiar with. It runs within a conventional operating system. We've got Windows 7 running on our machine. We install VMware Workstation, and we can do virtual computing. We can build virtual machines. We've got a MacBook. We can load different virtualization products on there, VMware Fusion, Parallels, those sorts of things, and boom, we've got virtualization capabilities then. So this hypervisor, a Type 2, is a distinct second level piece of software. It's a second software level in the chain, and I'll show you a diagram in just a second here. Now the guest operating system runs in a third level above the hardware, so you know what's going to happen here. A Type 1 hypervisor is going to give you a faster response, a better service, more efficient virtualization, and you're just going to like it better. Of course, you're going to pay more for it, and you have to have a server that supports it and all that. Now, when we're talking about a Type 2 hypervisor, we're talking about the things that most of us know the most about. VirtualBox, VMware Workstation, VMware Player, those kinds of things. So what does that look like? Well, notice we've got our hardware. This is our server. Then we install an OS. Windows 7, Windows Server 2008, Windows Server 2003, whatever. Then we install our hypervisor. And so we install VMware Workstation, just like we're going to do here in just a couple of videos. Then we can build our guest operating systems. We can install guest operating systems into the virtual environments. And so the difference between these is going to be right here. A bare metal hypervisor goes straight onto the hardware and runs and acts as the operating system. With a Type 2 hypervisor, we're going to install an OS, then install the hypervisor into the OS, and then we can create our virtuals. So that's all they mean, but you're going to see that out there, a Type 1, Type 2 hypervisor, and really a lot of times you won't see Type 1 and Type 2. You'll just see a reference to bare metal, and they're talking about a Type 1. So that's what a hypervisor is, and that's a little information about the two types.